Welcome back to the Zero E Michigan podcast. I'm Carl Bloss, and my partner is.
Larry Hudson.
Thanks for joining us today. We didn't have a podcast last week. I was traveling. So let's dive right into today's topic, which is smartphone apps. So when you do EV charging, for most people, it's going to involve a smartphone and associated apps. And that can be a blessing or a curse. So I want to dive a little bit into that. So let's get started with, do you even need a smartphone? And that came up for me. I have some friends who recently got a Volkswagen ID4, and one of the partners has a smartphone and the other one doesn't. So the one with the smartphone was able to get the Electrify America app, which Volkswagen uses and gives you free charging for 1 or 2 years. And then the other partner, they said, well, we're just going to get an RFID card for the other networks. So we did a video on that a while back on RFID cards. Larry, you have a Chevy Volt, but you don't use the Chevy app. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I've had a Chevy Volt for I got one in 2012, so over 10 years now. And right away, ChargePoint was a thing, but it was pretty much the only thing. And I think probably within the next 3 years, so what, 2012, maybe 2015, I came across PlugShare. And then back then, it was more people like allowing charging at their house.
Yeah, that
And
was the
so,
original purpose.
yeah, so that's how I was using it. So I went to several people's houses in Indiana, up in Kalamazoo, and would plug my car in. And it was more, it's a Chevy Volt that's got a generator. And ironically, the podcast we did a couple weeks ago, one of the guys commented, Larry, you have a choice. You probably shouldn't be charging it. And I never really thought about it. I was in, for 10 years, I was just in this cadence about letting people see me plug in, letting the chargers be used, because for the most part, you would just see chargers everybody, never seen people plugged in. But he's right. Just in the last year here, wow, I see someone plugged in besides Tesla chargers. All the other chargers are being used. The Tesla chargers, I'm still seeing, 6, 8, 10 chargers just sitting. But anyways, so I right away got one card, and then I bought a second
And when you
Volt,
say
and
say
then I bought
card, when you say card, you mean the RFID card,
yeah,
the
it's just a
the
little
little key
little mini
fob thing.
card.
Mhm.
And so then I ordered a second card. Then I got a third Volt because I'm buying them needing to be refreshed, damaged, whatever. And so my son was driving one, I'm driving the other, and the third one's in the middle of getting repaired. But I could still drive around, and I just really like the card. By the time I open the app, and every time you get a new Chevy Volt, you get like 6 months of free app. But for me, the way my brain works, I just love having that card in the car, in my wallet, and you just walk up and you tap it. Because it always seemed like the lag time, getting the app opened up, and then, the machine. I just like the card.
Yeah. Now, having said that, most cars do come with an app, and it's most of the basic functionality is still free and it remains free. So I have a Kia Niro along with my Tesla, and the Kia app will let you do certain functions even if you don't pay for the premium connectivity. So one of the things that I think is the most useful is to see what is your state of charge, what is your battery percent? Because if you're particularly on a level 2 charger, the level 2 charger doesn't give that information to the charging network. So the only way to really see what is your state of charge is for your car's own app. So whether you own a Kia or a Chevy or a Tesla, I think it's super useful to have that your car's app just to see what is the status of your car. But then you mentioned PlugShare, and I would say that to me that's the number two. Some would say the number one. I think you might say it's the number one app to have. And so, what is PlugShare? You talked about the history of it. Is that if you had a home charger and you were willing to share that with others that were visiting your area, then you could let people know, hey, it's okay to charge at my place, and you could put that in the description. So I have used that once, and those are still there. If you open up the app or the plugshare.com, you'll see the blue icons with a little house. And so those are still available. I used one of those up in the UP when I rode my motorcycle from Marquette down to the bridge. There's a guy named Ivan. He had a Nemo 1450, and I contacted him ahead of time and said, "Hey, would it be possible to use your 1450 outlet?" And he said, "Absolutely." Didn't want to take any payment. I would have, gladly
Right.
sent them a couple of bucks on PayPal. So I have used that, but mostly PlugShare now is also for finding the public charging. The green will be the level 2, and the orange will be the DC fast chargers. So to me, PlugShare is the absolute number 2. Beyond that, you can use EV charging with RFID cards, with credit cards, without having a smartphone. But it quickly turns into a situation where you're going to have a ton of cards. And I do have probably 5 or 6 cards in my glove box, and they are handy. But the other thing that the apps always do is they tell you the current status of which chargers are being used, whether they're online, offline, what is the cost, how many kilowatt hours have you gotten, what is your running cost total. So it is useful
Right.
for that. So one other one I wanted to highlight that I think every EV driver should have is a better route planner. So whether you use the web interface, so ABRP, or abetterrouteplanner.com, and the associated app, this is just a general planning driving app that you can use with any car, an ICE car, an EV. But what's neat about it is if you put your vehicle into it and say, I want to go from point A to point B, it will calculate what it thinks is the most optimal places for you to stop. And you can set parameters of whether you want to stop longer and fewer stops, or you want to stop for a shorter period of time and more often. So all those kind of parameters, your vehicle's efficiency. So I find that a super useful tool. There's a free
Yeah.
version, and then there's a premium version where you can get additional functionality.
I heard that. Yeah, you could really nerd out. Like if, you normally do the trip by yourself, so you know that you can go whatever distance, but all of a sudden you're taking 4 people with you, so you can type in that you're carrying extra weight, you're towing a trailer like when you're towing
Yeah,
your
yeah,
motorcycle
you
on
can
it.
change the
And
efficiency. But let me give you another example. So those same friends of mine with the Volkswagen, they just got their car, so they get free charging on Electrify America. So one of the things I showed them was they were going from Michigan to Cleveland, and because they get free charging at Electrify America, I changed the settings so that they preferred the Electrify America stations because they always got those for free. So you can say only visit those. So you can give those a preference depending on
yeah,
which
yeah.
which networks you are most comfortable with, or if you have a particular pass with them. So I find that particularly useful with that tool. So then,
Google, I forgot. Google Maps also has that now. You can, as you're just doing on Google Maps, and actually in the last 2 years, I started playing with that.
yeah, that's true. And if you follow people like Mark Travels, he rides an electric motorcycle throughout the world, and he's using Google to find charging stations. But then at the end of the day, you still need some way to activate the stations. So
Right.
you always end up coming back to the smartphone apps for those charging networks. And so here in Michigan, I would say the biggest one, and you've already mentioned it, Larry, is ChargePoint. They're just ubiquitous. What's also nice is you do have a lot of free charge point stations. So right here in Muskegon, we have free charge point stations in the downtown and at the beach. There are paid chargers for those that are viewing this on YouTube. You'll see behind me the DC fast chargers in Whitehall. So those are paid. So then you have to link a credit card to it. You have to have an account, all that kind of good stuff. We mentioned Electrify America. I think that one is worth having. You can pay with a credit card, but if you have any of the preferential treatment from Electrify America, again, if your vehicle comes with free charging or you have one of the Pass Plus membership, which in the past was $4 a month, and what that did for you, you would buy down the per kilowatt hour rate. So if I remember correctly, if you didn't have the Pass Plus, it was 47 cents per kilowatt hour. And if you did have the Pass Plus, then it was 36. There was like an 11-cent difference. And so it worked out if you charged at least 33 kilowatt hours per month, then it was a wash, and anything more than that, you were saving money. Now, They recently send out an email that they're going to be changing that to $7 a month, and they're no longer have unified rates. It's going to be on a per site basis. So we'll have to see how that shakes out. But
Wow.
again, still worth having. Again, here in Michigan, just focusing on that. Shell Recharge is another good one. I find that a lot of Meijer locations have Shell Recharge level 2 chargers, and they give you 1 hour for free while you're shopping. After that 1 hour, it turns into $2 per hour. But it's kind of like a fuel perk, if you will. So if you shop at Meijer and you're there for an hour, you can get 7 kilowatt hours, and maybe that's enough to get you home and back. And certainly it's kind of a cool little freebie.
Now, what is it? What kind of chargers are there that at Myers? I know there's the Tesla. What is the charger you're referring to, or is
Yeah,
that the
they're
Tesla charger?
well, Meijer has they have Tesla chargers typically, but they also will have either the ChargePoint DC Fast for non-Teslas, and then these Shell Recharger, the level 2s. They're kind of small. If you don't know what you're looking for, they're just a tiny little box, and they usually have about 4 of them in one location. In Lansing, I think they only have 2. But here in Muskegon, in Holland, in Grand Rapids, Meyer Cascade, they'll have 4 of those level 2 chargers. So another good one to have, I'm finding, is Blink, particularly like in Traverse City, or recently in Ludington Bay, they put in a Blink charger. So that's an app worth having. And a lot of these do have RFID cards. Sometimes there's a cost associated with them, but I always recommend getting the RFID card. Like Larry said, you don't need to fumble with the app, and sometimes stuff is offline. It'll with the card, it almost always works.
Right.
Yeah. And similarly, EVgo, we don't see a lot of those here in West Michigan, but I know out in the Detroit area, there are some of those. In Chicago, if you start getting outside of Michigan, you start to see more EVgo. And of course, one neat thing about EVgo is they're ahead of the curve in terms of putting the NACS connector, the Tesla style connector. They've been doing that for a little while, where you can plug directly into your Tesla without an adapter. And the other thing is they also have this plug and charge system where you don't need to fumble with a card or an app or anything like that. It will read your car's VIN as long as you pre-register your car with their system. And I
Wow, that's
so
great.
so I recently registered my Tesla with EVgo, so now I'm curious about how well that works.
So where are these EV goes? What you said that's Chicago where you run into that?
Yeah, the Chicago area, I found them in St. Louis. If you look in the eastern part of Michigan, Detroit area, I've seen a few EVgo's.
And so they're like a competitive charge point then basically.
Right. Yeah, it's just another network.
Or is it more like a Charge America? That's the VW.
Well, I mean, they're all competing networks. It's just, again, use PlugShare to find the station that you need, and then see which network they're on. And then, get the app. I always recommend get the app and create an account before you get to that site, because otherwise you're going to be sitting there trying to download an app with, potentially spotty network connectivity, and you got to create an account and create a password and put in your credit card and all that stuff. So if you can do that ahead of time, you'll save yourself some headache when you actually go to charge.
And so I like that word you use, opportunity charging.
Mm-hmm.
So when I grew up in Denver, and I live in Michigan now, so I'll make that trip, especially a lot more so when my son was younger. And I noticed that Walmart is it Charge America? What's that?
Electrify
What's
America. I think they have a lot of.
Electrify America.
Mm-hmm.
So from here to Denver, that's pretty much all there was Electrify America's at Walmart's, and then Charge Point at like businesses and shopping malls
Mm-hmm.
is what the two that this has been a couple of years back now. Now you also mentioned that the one charging system started having Tesla, but how, like in the last year or for a couple of years?
I think they started that trend before the whole NACS kerfuffle that happened here recently, where GM and Ford are all getting on board with that. I think
Yeah.
they've done that to cater to the Tesla crowd before that
You mean like
announcement was
years
made.
advanced, several years ago?
I
They
don't
did
I
that?
don't know exactly, but I know it's been out there. They've mentioned it as part of their marketing, that they have both CCS and the Tesla connector.
and essentially you go up to the charger, just going to have two cords. One's
Yeah,
one, one's the other, right?
right.
Which you're seeing more and more
Just like
on,
you
on
today, you see at the charge point DCFCs, like the one behind me, there's a Chatamo and there's a CCS, right? So I think the Chatamo is, as we know, is going to be dying out. So chances are charge point and the others are probably going to be retrofitting that Chatamo connector. So sorry, Leaf owners, sorry to the others that use Chatamo, but that's unfortunately the way that the industry is going. Chances are they're going to be swapping out the Chatamo for an NACS connector.
and I hear you saying that, but I still feel that the masses are a little bit more, like 80% of people have a little bit of like, I want my car to kind of look nice, right? And so the 20% or maybe even 10% of people, they don't care what their car looks like as long as they can, be green. And I feel like that's been a black eye on the EV community, right? Like for me, I remember my first time I got involved in electric vehicles, and the guy that was running Kiva, now Paul runs it, but 10 years ago, he wanted me to go pick up a brand new Leaf. I was like, no, I'm not driving that ugly thing.
Come
And
on, Larry.
it's like really, it's, but
I
it's an
mean,
issue for me.
but
And
look at the
I still feel
Mitsubishi.
like,
Look at the Mitsubishi I meet.
oh, that one too.
That.
I wouldn't even go for a ride in that.
Oh,
If you
come on!
tried
But
to
it's
give me,
so. But it's so
I would
ugly.
ride
It's
my bike.
cute. It's so ugly. It's cute. Look. Ben Nelson over in Wisconsin. We had him on the podcast. He's got one that he's got cow splotches on it. I mean, come on, how cute is that? He
Yeah,
even built a
yeah, no,
little
that's
cow
cool.
horn, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Some people
yeah.
can pull it off, but but again, I really feel like I am glad that the ugly, it's just I don't get it. Again too, I feel like we should do Dieselgate on Prius and on Toyota and on Nissan because they both made beautiful cars. They could
All
have
right.
just
Well,
used the same
Larry, I
body
gotta
anyway.
come on. We're not talking about that today. I gotta reel you back in. All right. I think the new Prius actually looks pretty cool. Believe it or not,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they finally.
Which is kind of funny because you've seen that bumper sticker. It says "Cool Prius," says "No one ever," right? And people put that on their Prius just to self-deprecating. But I think
I
the new
agree
one
with you
actually
though.
looks pretty decent.
Yeah, the new Prius, I agree. I like it. I'd drive that. But
All right, let's refocus here. I just wanted to mention a couple more. You know, I personally have like a dozen charging apps on my phone, which is ridiculous if you think about it, right? There really ought to be one app that rules them all. Unfortunately, we're not there yet. So let me mention a couple other ones real quick here. So NLX, there's the NLWay and Juice Pass Enterprise. And I have to say, if there's a wrong way to implement it, NLX has done it. This is such a nightmare with those. They have QR codes. I never know which app I'm supposed to use, the NLWay, the Juice Pass Enterprise. Some of them have a web interface. Um, those guys need to figure that out better. But yeah, sometimes you have to do it. There's EV Connect. There's Amp Up. And then one of the things I've started seeing is that some of the convenience stores like 7-Eleven and Circle K are starting to put chargers in. And I noticed when I was down in Virginia, there was a Circle K charger and you needed a Circle K EV charging app. So just be aware of that. I think those stations do also accept credit cards, but it might be worth having those. So just look at where you're going on PlugShare and then just get it as you need it. And then
right,
I did want to mention also that there are some that don't use an app at all, but you still need a smartphone because you need a mobile web interface. And the one that I can think of here in Michigan is the Red E network. And they've spread pretty far and wide here. And so you'll see those on level 2 chargers, on DC fast chargers. I know there's some around the west side of the state. So you basically go up to them, they've got a QR code, you put up your smartphone, and then it brings up a web interface where you can put in a credit card and just charge without having to download a special app for that. If you go to Canada, just remember you're going to have a whole other set of apps. For example, Electrify Canada, the equivalent network to Electrify America, has a separate app. So you can't use the Electrify America app at the Electrify Canada. So just remember that if you're going across the border, you need a new app. You need to put a credit card, all that good stuff. Flow, FLO, is another widespread network over there. One neat thing about the Flow chargers is they seem to have roaming agreements with ChargePoint. So I think you can authorize the flow chargers with a ChargePoint account. But if you don't want to rely on that, download the Flow app. And then in the French-speaking part of Canada, in Quebec, you have the Circuit Électrique, so CE. Look for those. So there might be some others out there. And for what it's worth, from what I've seen from Ontario, Quebec, they do have a pretty dense charging network. Dense meaning a lot of them not stupid. But yeah, so if you go up to Canada, just make sure you got the right apps.
So what do you think why did Canada adopt EVs? What is it that made, you know what I mean? I find that interesting that
Yeah,
they seem to be more progressive, just a more mature
I'm not.
culture.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I suspect because it's a little bit more of a socially thinking country. They probably have more incentives for the charging, so the charging hosts probably get a lot more rebates. I'm not 100% sure.
And so when you're saying kind of the way the government helps with the healthcare, and so they're also more apt to put chargers, and like we have a problem, like consumers can't just put up free vehicle charging because then the people that have to go get gas would complain. But in Canada, they maybe can get away with that.
Again, Canada is a little bit more, I don't want to say socialist, but social thinking. Like you said, the healthcare, the tuition, those are included with the taxes that you pay. So I suspect it's very similar with the charging infrastructure. So one of the things I wanted to point out, so when you have these apps that require payment, a lot of them maintain a balance of funds in that account. So kind of like a Starbucks account or an Easy Pass where you load it up with $20 and then it kind of chips away at that balance, which it's kind of annoying because in some cases you're going to have funds that are tied up for months and years. So I have an EVgo account and I think I loaded it with $20 years ago, and I used one of them at the in the Chicago area, and I really haven't used it since. So I think I've had, $15 sitting there forever. For what it's worth, a lot of those networks are switching to the pay as you go, pay per session. I've noticed ChargePoint has started doing that. So I kind of like that a little bit better. Tesla does it that way too. For every charging session, you get an individual credit card line item. What did we miss? What networks do you like? What apps do you like? So tell us in the comments below, or shoot us an email. Let us know what works for you.
For the comments that people have been posting, we appreciate that. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. If you enjoyed or learned from this episode of Zero E Michigan, please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Visit our YouTube channel for other related videos at youtube.com/@0E-Michigan.